Hey class, good evening and welcome to week 7. So this week marks kind of getting close to the halfway point of the semester, which is pretty amazing. But it also marks kind of really the beginning of the time where we're going to start to see all the hard work that you've been doing in projects 1 and 2 start to come together. We're going to start to pull all those different skills and strategies together into developing kind of the work that you'll be doing for project 3. And so for this week, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about kind of what Project 3 is in a little bit more detail. I know I referenced it a little bit in last week's video, but also talking about how it's going to build off of all the work that you've done. Before I do that, though, I just want to do a quick reminder that I did push back the due date for Project 2 to this coming Friday. So that would be this Friday right here where you're doing this work, because I wasn't getting through the rough drafts as fast as I would like, and I wanted to make sure that you guys had enough time to use my feedback on your rough drafts to make any kind of revisions that you would want to do. So if you haven't received feedback from me on your rough draft yet, you will get it, within the next day or two. So you have plenty of time to revise and submit. The folder for submission hasn't moved; it's in the same place as always. Just the due date got pushed back. Okay, and so with that then, with Project 2 being due this week, you'll also have everything else back in terms of vlogs or anything else that you might be waiting on from me. You'll have all that back. So we can begin Project 3 with a clean slate, ready to go with all of your things kind of graded and returned to you. All right, so let's take a look at what we're doing for week 7 then. So the goal for this week is to really get acquainted with the concepts and the work that we'll be doing for Project 3. And so to do that, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to go ahead and read the assignment descriptions. Now you remember, you'll find those under the Project 3 folder, as well as all our other things. And so I'm going to ask you to read through this Project 3A. These are also on your syllabus as well, obviously. And so take a look at those, and we're going to take a look at them as kind of together here in a second. Let's just see what else we have going on. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is to kind of get to know what Project 3B is all about, and I'll talk about that in a second. But essentially, Project 3B is going to be an opportunity for you to start to kind of tie some of the research together that you've been doing and that you will be doing in Project 3. And to present that to your class and to your peer review groups in kind of an interesting way. So again, we'll talk about that in a second. And then just to read Chapter 3 out of the Wordsworth Guide. And so what Chapter 3 is going to be really helpful for, and what you should spend some time thinking about, is how you are identifying topics in your research, but also how you're thinking about what topics might be interesting to you. And so Chapter 3 is a really good way to start to think about that idea of topics in relationship to research. The other thing that I'll be asking you to do is to watch this YouTube video that I will post. There should be a link for already, but there is not, obviously, so I'll post a link right here for you guys to watch. And what this will do is this will show you exactly kind of the idea or the idea behind the format for this 3B assignment. And then obviously Sunday you have a blog due. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's take a minute to talk about Project 3 then. So what Project 3 is it's a literature review. And again, I know I referenced this a little bit last week, but let's spend some time thinking about what a literature review is. Essentially, what a literature review does is it allows you to pull together a lot of different pieces of research that are all dealing with the same or a similar topic. And it's going to ask you to summarize what they're saying, but then to synthesize the conversation as a whole. And that that idea of synthesis is sometimes a little hard to understand. Essentially, what we're talking about when we're saying synthesize, we're talking about pulling all those different things together in order to show some sort of relationship. And so, for example, what you'll see in later weeks when we're looking at samples, or when excuse me, or when you're starting to draft, is all of these resources are talking about the same topics, but they're coming at them from different angles. And so, your goal in a literature review is to show what are people saying about this topic and how are they approaching it differently. Now, what this will allow you to do is it will allow you to really clearly map out the conversation that's being had around a particular topic. And we'll use this conversation in Project 4 as a building block for your own argument. Because essentially what this will allow you to do is it'll allow you to demonstrate your knowledge on this topic, to say, like, look, I am an expert on this particular topic because I know what everyone else has been saying. And so because I know what everyone else is doing, I can make a more informed argument. I can build off of what they're saying, or I can disagree with something and propose something new. But essentially the idea is that you will be a much more informed person when you're making that argument. And so literature review is a really key tool to doing that. And so project 3 is going to be a literature review component. And then in project 4, we'll use the literature review to make an argument like that. So let's talk about the assignment itself. And so what we'll be doing, I'll let you read the introduction and rationale on your own. But what we'll be doing is we'll be doing research over the next few weeks using the library database, using the research guides that I've talked about in the past, or if you can get to the library itself, great. I know some of you are not on campus because this is an online class, but you're going to be doing research in order to find out more about a particular topic. That's the kind of end goal. But we're going to get there with a series of kind of smaller assignments. So let's take a look here. So literature reviews synthesize information, compare and contrast ideas, and clearly describe relationships between well-cited texts so that readers can get a sense of the broader conversation, etc., etc. To complete this project, we're going to move through several smaller yet formal scaffolding steps. These steps will aid you in successfully researching and writing a literature review of this course, but when paired with critical reflection, they will also help you devise a personal process for researching and writing literature reviews, as well as more complex and larger stakes. So essentially, the goal here, and what I'm going to ask you guys to kind of continually reflect on, is not only what did you find today when you did some research, but the kind of strategies or skills that you're using to actually find those things. And so, when it comes to, say, your process memo at the end of this assignment, I'm going to ask you to talk about, what are some skills or strategies that you used that really paid off. So, for example, when you ran into trouble and couldn't find anything, what did you do? Did you ask a librarian? Did you reach out to that expert that you contacted in project 1? Like, what did you do? How did you go over that hurdle? Or how did you find these sources? So the first thing that we're going to be doing then is going to be revising your initial research questions. So remember, these are the questions that you came up with at the end of project 1, questions that you had about the topics that you're noticing. Or if you wanted and you've kind of stumbled on a new topic that you're really interested in, you could develop a new research question about a topic of interest that's connected to the discourse community you've been researching. And I want to stress that you're maintaining focus on that same community. So in order to answer these questions, you'll need to find, follow, and organize sustained research agenda consisting of multiple searches and myriad texts. So your first goal here is to secure 1 or 2 core sources or launch text that significantly addresses your research questions. So you may already have some of these things. I think week 6 asked you to start thinking about launch text. And so you might have stumbled on a text or two in your research for project 1 or project 2 when you're thinking about like what articles you're going to read that really work for you. If not, or if you're changing your question, this is a really good opportunity to think about like what are those texts, or like can you find that 1 or 2 texts that really gets you on the path. So from those 2 sources, you're going to build your answers to your research questions by forging a research path. Now, what we're talking about when we're talking about research paths is it's those strategies that I just mentioned a minute ago. So anything like keywords, footnotes, citations, whatever you're picking up from those launch texts that might help you go back into the library and find more text. So for example, if you're reading this first article that you found that you really like, and you notice they continuously reference, a particular scholar or a particular study or a particular, whatever, or if they're continually using like some specific words that you think are really important, then those are things that you can go search for that you didn't know about before you read that text. So I'll give you an example. In my own research, I was looking at like immigration in England. And one of the things that I came across is this word stranger that they used over and over and over again to describe a different kind of immigrant population that I never knew that was a concept that they used. But because I read this one text, I learned this new word for my research. And so then when I went back into the library, I could use stranger as a keyword, and I found a whole new set of sources, right, that were still related to my topic, but things that I would never have found without that one launch text. So the idea is that you might find something similar, some sort of like keyword or kind of hot button issue that your article is talking about that can really set you up for success. So our goal then is going to be to follow this research path through at least 5 iterations or moves for a total of 6 texts. So essentially what we're looking for in this kind of, as we're starting to think about project 3, is we're going to be looking for like 6 good texts that are all addressing your kind of research question, your research topic. Now, I've had students do this in the past. So for each successful research move and corresponding text, you'll compose a hybrid version of an annotated bibliography entry. These entries will help you track and summarize the information you're gathering, as well as begin to establish relationships between ideas and texts. Each entry should both reflect your research process as well as begin synthesizing your gathered information into usable prose for literature review. Simultaneously, you'll use information visualization or concept mapping strategies to sort, evaluate, and compare your research materials by topics, position, or concepts in order to analyze emerging relationships between ideas. The point of pre-writing exercise is to help you crystallize these relationships into broader categories. Okay, so there's a couple things that I want to say here. The annotated bibliography entries that I'm going to ask you guys to start to think about is not something that you'll kind of turn in separately, but it is something I'm going to ask you guys to include with like a rough draft of this assignment. And so in a few weeks when you turn a rough draft, I'm going to ask you guys to give me some summaries of the sources that you're reading, as well as kind of how you see them fitting in with the sources around them. And so that's how we're going to be doing them. You're not turning these in separately, but you are going to be kind of using those to build in your rough draft. Okay. So just to be clear, this is not a separate assignment. This will be kind of the building block of your rough draft that I'll be looking for. So don't go looking for an annotated bibliography thing on the syllabus or anything like that. It's just part of that kind of building block. When I'm talking about an annotated bibliography, though, so when you're thinking about how to do that, all we're thinking about is just a brief summary of the source and then a brief description of how it fits into this project or how you see this source kind of helping you. And so that's what we're talking about. So this information visualization is what you're going to be thinking about for blog 5 there this week, so we'll take a look at that in a second. So let's go back to week 7. Oh, real quick. So before I go back to week 7, the one thing that I want to think about though is when you're thinking about revising those research questions, which should be your kind of first step for this week, I've put up this guide here that will help us think about it. And so this is something I kind of talked about last week too, but I want you to kind of take a look at this and start to think about, what are some questions that you have about the topics that you're interested in, and try to come up with some of those that really could help steer you on some good research paths. And then the goal is going to be to narrow that down into one particular question about the topic that you're interested in that will get us launched into the library. Okay, so week 7 then. So we've just gone over 3A. I want you to read 3B on your own and then watch this video that I'll link here below. And then we'll talk about that more later on in the week. And so just to kind of save time, let's jump to blog 5. So for this blog, this is where the information visualization thing comes in. What you're going to be doing is you're going to upload a link or like an example of the visualization of your launch text that helps you think through and demonstrate how text you're working with speak to each other and help you establish the larger conversation around the issue. So what we're talking about here is like we're literally talking about like those kind of thought bubbles that you might make when you're writing, or some sort of like outline map, or kind of those the big word bubbles, whatever we're doing. Basically, we're looking for some sort of like diagram that will help you kind of work through like, okay, so if author A is here, author B is here, what are connecting threads that we see? And it sounds weird to do it in this way, but actually this idea of like visually mapping this out will help you really figure out how these things are fitting together, how these two sources, those first two launch texts, are coming at this kind of similar issue. So in chapter 1, there are some representations of visuals about the research writing process that might help you think about and represent your research visually. You might also Google mapping research to check out other examples. Let's just check this out. So for example, this is what I'm talking about. So like your main research idea, some authors, these are all ways that you could be mapping out your topics, things like that. And so that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like information visualization, just some sort of word match, like your topic with like author 1, 2, 3, 4, and how are they all coming at this topic. Whatever it is, whatever your system is, or whatever like helps you actually figure this out, just something like that. And so you could upload this as a Word doc, like you could import a picture to it, you could take a picture with your phone and upload it as a picture, whatever you want to do. It's completely up to you. All right, so just to recap then, before we're out of time, you're going to take a look at Project 3B and watch the video that I'll link. Really start to research the topic that you're interested in, and we'll see what we come up with. And stay tuned for more videos this week to help you guys along.